The bridge of the USS Enterprise D hummed with its characteristic efficiency, a symphony of controlled purpose as the Federation flagship charted the edges of explored space. Captain Jean-Luc Picard stood before the main view screen, hands clasped behind his back, watching a nebula's violet tendrils dance across the void. These were the moments he treasured, humanity's boldest achievement, gliding through the cosmos, seeking knowledge rather than conquest, building bridges rather than walls. The 24th century had proven that intelligence, when properly applied, could transcend the primitive instincts that had nearly destroyed Earth centuries before. "Captain," Lieutenant Worf's deep voice cut through the bridge's ambient sounds, his Klingon features tensing with warrior's instinct. "Sensors are detecting a massive spatial distortion bearing 327 Mark 15. It's expanding." Picard turned sharply. On screen, the nebula vanished, replaced by something that made even Picard's experienced crew pause. Space itself was tearing, a wound in reality that pulsed with colors that had no names in any language. Through the rift, massive structures were emerging. First a jump gate, its rotating sections stabilizing as it breached into their universe, then ships of designs wholly unfamiliar to Federation records, and finally, impossibly, a structure 5 miles long that dwarfed anything Picard had encountered outside of Borg space. "My God," Commander Riker breathed from the first officer's chair. Sensors reading multiple vessels and one station-class structure, data reported from Ops. His golden eyes processing information faster than any organic mind could manage. The station is cylindrical, approximately 8 kilometers in length, rotating to generate artificial gravity. Configuration suggests an O'Neill colony design, though vastly more sophisticated than Earth's 22nd century attempts. "I am detecting life signs, human and multiple non-human species. Energy signatures are inconsistent with known technology." "Communications?" Picard asked. "Multiple bands, Captain," Worf replied. "They appear to be attempting to establish protocols. Translating now. Wait." His console chirped. "Incoming hail, audio and visual. They're identifying themselves as Babylon 5. Picard straightened his uniform with that characteristic tug. First contact, even with humans from what appeared to be another reality, required precision and dignity. On screen, and number 1, signal yellow alert. Tactical, but not threatening. The view screen shifted to reveal a command center that looked simultaneously familiar and alien. It was human in design, but harder somehow, more militaristic than Starfleet's aesthetic. The man who appeared wore an Earth Alliance uniform that spoke of military tradition rather than exploration, his face weathered in ways that suggested he'd seen combat that Starfleet officers rarely encountered in this enlightened age. "This is Captain John Sheridan of Babylon 5, Earth Alliance. To whoever's receiving this, we've just experienced what our science teams are calling a dimensional breach. One moment we were in our own space, the next..." He paused, glancing off screen. "Well, we're somewhere else. If you're receiving this, we come in peace, but we're prepared to defend ourselves if necessary." Picard noted the distinction immediately. Not "we come in peace" alone, but with the caveat of readiness for violence. Interesting. "Captain Sheridan, I'm Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the United Federation of Planet Starship Enterprise. Welcome to our universe, though I suspect that welcome comes with considerable complications." He allowed himself a slight smile. "We've encountered spatial anomalies before, but nothing quite of this magnitude. May I suggest we meet face to face to discuss your situation? I believe we have much to offer each other, beginning with understanding." Sheridan's expression shifted through several emotions: relief, calculation, wariness, before settling on cautious professionalism. "Agreed, Captain Picard. But fair warning, Babylon 5 isn't just an Earth Alliance station. We're a diplomatic outpost hosting multiple species, multiple governments, and multiple competing interests. When you come here, you're entering what we call the last best hope for peace. It's complicated. Captain, Data interjected quietly. I'm detecting additional vessels emerging from the rift. Configuration suggests military escorts, Narn, Centauri, and Minbari, designs according to linguistic analysis of their identification signals. Also detecting energy signatures that do not match any known propulsion or weapon systems. Some vessels appear to be partially organic in nature. Picard's mind raced through first contact protocols, diplomatic procedures, and the profound implications of an entire diplomatic station, complete with multiple spacefaring civilizations appearing in Federation space. And they'd materialized near the Romulan neutral zone, which would create political complications within hours once the Empire's scouts detected this anomaly. Mr. Sheridan, Picard said carefully, I believe we should discuss this in person, and soon. The region of space you've entered is politically sensitive. The Federation will do everything in our power to assist you, but there are other powers in this quadrant who may view your arrival differently. Sheridan's jaw tightened. Of course there are. There always are. He nodded curtly. We'll prepare to receive you, Captain. Babylon 5 out. The screen returned to the image of that impossible station, rotating majestically against the stars, while ships of unknown origin took defensive positions around it. Picard stood silent for a moment, considering the profound weight of what had just occurred. Number 1, assemble a diplomatic team. Mr. Data, Mr. Worf, Counselor Troy. You're with me. And someone get me every piece of information we have on dimensional displacement phenomena. He paused. Also, send a priority message to Starfleet Command. Tell them we've just made first contact with an entire civilization. Multiple civilizations, sir, Data corrected gently. Indeed, Mr. Data. Picard allowed himself a moment of wonder beneath his professional demeanor. Multiple civilizations. How remarkably complicated. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below, to boldly go where no one has gone before. The Enterprise began its approach to Babylon 5, while in the darkness of space, the dimensional rift pulsed with unstable energy, neither fully open nor fully closed, a wound between universes that would change everything for both realities. The transporter room materialized Picard's team into what could only be described as controlled chaos. Babylon 5's docking bay was a testament to diversity that made even the Federation's multicultural approach look provincial. Humans in various military and civilian attire rushed past aliens of species Picard had never encountered, all speaking languages the Universal Translator struggled to process in real time. The architecture was functional, industrial, lacking the sleek elegance of Federation design, but possessing a worn dignity that spoke of hard use and harder times. Captain Sheridan waited with a security detail that looked decidedly more combat-ready than Starfleet's typical honor guard. Beside him stood a woman whose second-in-command insignia matched Commander Riker's equivalent, her Slavic features set in an expression of professional skepticism that never quite reached hostility. Captain Picard. Sheridan extended his hand in the traditional Earth greeting, which Picard returned with genuine warmth. Welcome to Babylon 5. This is Commander Susan Ivanova, my XO. Sorry about the atmosphere. We're still running damage control from the transition, and our ambassadors are demanding answers we don't have. Understandable, Captain. Picard gestured to his team. Commander William Riker, Lieutenant Commander Data, Lieutenant Worf, and Counselor Deanna Troi. We represent the Federation's commitment to peaceful first contact and mutual understanding. Ivanova's eyes lingered on Worf with particular interest. Klingon. We don't have that species in our records, but the forehead ridges are distinctive. Warrior race. Worf's expression remained stoic, though Picard detected the faintest hint of approval. Yes, the Klingon Empire is a long-standing ally of the Federation, though our relationship has been complex. Aren't they all? Ivanova muttered. As they walked through the station's corridors, Picard observed everything with the trained eye of both captain and diplomat. The station's design suggested a civilization that had fought for every inch of peace, where security checkpoints coexisted with gardens, where military readiness never quite relaxed into the comfortable security the Federation enjoyed. People of various species nodded to Sheridan with respect that seemed earned through crisis rather than granted by rank. "Before we proceed to the ambassadorial meeting," Sheridan said carefully, "I need to be direct with you. Captain, Babylon 5 exists because 5 years ago, humans nearly went to war with the Minbari, a vastly superior military power that nearly exterminated our species. The war ended mysteriously at the Battle of the Line, right before Earth would have fallen. This station was built afterward as neutral ground where we and other species could resolve conflicts through words instead of weapons. Our peace is new, fragile, and bought with blood." Picard absorbed this information with growing concern. A war of extermination ended mysteriously, with survivors now attempting diplomacy. It was admirable and tragic in equal measure. "We have 4 major ambassadors representing their governments," Ivanova continued. "The Minbari, who nearly destroyed us. The Centauri Republic, a declining empire with delusions of restored glory. The Narn regime, recently liberated from a century of brutal Centauri occupation. And various others, including some we're not entirely sure about." "Not sure?" Riker asked. Sheridan and Ivanova exchanged a look that spoke volumes. "You'll understand when you meet Ambassador Kush. The Vorlons are difficult to explain." They entered what Sheridan called the Council Chambers, a circular room designed for multi-species diplomacy. Picard's first impression was of barely contained tension. 3 aliens sat at separate positions, each radiating the distinct energy of their species and history, while various aides and translators hovered nearby. And in one corner, something that made even Data pause in his analysis. The being called Kosh was contained within an environmental suit that pulsed with organic bioluminescence, its form suggesting something vast compressed into merely humanoid shape. Picard felt Troi stiffen beside him, her empathic abilities clearly overwhelmed by whatever presence inhabited that suit. But it was the other 3 ambassadors who commanded immediate attention through sheer force of personality. The Minbari stood first. Delenn, according to the nameplate. She possessed an otherworldly grace, her bone crest forming a natural crown, her eyes reflecting wisdom that reminded Picard of Vulcans, yet warmer somehow. She wore robes that suggested religious significance, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of moral authority. "Captain Picard of the Federation, I am Delenn of the Minbari. We have heard your vessel described through our sensors. Your technology suggests a civilization that has achieved considerable advancement. I sense in you a dedication to peace and understanding. These are qualities the Minbari respect deeply." "Ambassador Delenn." Picard bowed slightly. "The Federation shares your commitment to peaceful coexistence among diverse species. We would very much like to understand how we might assist your situation." The Centauri ambassador rose with theatrical flourish. Londo Mollari, his elaborate hairstyle defying what Picard knew of human fashion evolution, his eyes sharp with intelligence and something sadder underneath. "Ah, Captain. A new face, a new power, new possibilities. Tell me, does your Federation play games of politics and influence, or do you pretend such things are beneath you while practicing them in secret?" Picard met his gaze evenly. "The Federation believes in direct diplomacy, Ambassador. We find that honesty, while occasionally uncomfortable, serves better in the long term than deception." "How refreshing," Londo laughed, though it didn't reach his eyes. "And how unlikely." But perhaps your universe is different from ours. We shall see. The third ambassador had not stood. G'Kar of the Narn, his reptilian features scarred in ways that suggested combat, his spotted cranium and red eyes giving him a predatory appearance that his dignified bearing somehow transcended. When he finally spoke, his voice rumbled with barely contained intensity. "Captain Picard, you speak of peace and understanding. Beautiful words. Tell me, what does your Federation know of occupation? Of watching your world burn while others profit from your suffering? Of fighting for every breath of freedom?" His eyes fixed on Picard with laser focus. "The Narn know these things intimately. We were slaves to the Centauri for 100 years. Our peace with them is necessity, not forgiveness. So when you speak of cooperation and mutual understanding, forgive me if I require more than pleasant words before extending trust." The silence that followed was profound. Picard understood immediately what he was facing. Not the theoretical conflicts the Federation occasionally mediated, but raw, recent wounds between species that had committed and suffered atrocities within living memory. These beings weren't exploring strange new worlds and seeking out new civilizations. They were surviving, negotiating, trying desperately not to slide back into wars that had nearly consumed them all. Picard chose his words with surgical precision, aware that his next sentences would establish the foundation for everything that followed. The council chamber had fallen silent. 4 alien ambassadors and 1 human captain waiting to see if the Federation's representative would offer naive platitudes or genuine understanding. "Ambassador G'Kar, I will not insult your experience by pretending the Federation fully comprehends what your people endured. We cannot, but I can tell you that humanity, my people, once enslaved each other, committed genocide, nearly destroyed our own world through nuclear war and environmental collapse." He paused, letting that truth settle. "We evolved beyond those horrors, not through forgetting them, but by building institutions dedicated to ensuring they never happen again. The Federation exists because we learned that diversity is strength, that peace requires vigilance, and that former enemies can become allies when mutual respect replaces mutual fear." G'Kar's eyes narrowed, measuring, but he nodded slowly. "At least you acknowledge the darkness. That is more than most offer." "Captain Picard," Delenn interjected, her voice carrying that strange combination of serenity and steel. "You say your civilization evolved, yet evolution is a process, not a destination. The Minbari have sought enlightenment for thousands of years, and still we make mistakes." Her gaze grew distant. "Terrible mistakes, which nearly led us to destroy your distant cousins entirely. We do not speak of it often, but the Earth-Minbari War was not our proudest moment. We allowed emotion to override wisdom, and humans paid the price." Data cocked his head, processing. "Ambassador, if I may, our historical records show no evidence of this war. Given that Captain Sheridan's Earth Alliance appears to be human, I must conclude that you are from an alternate timeline or parallel universe where humanity developed differently." "Not so differently," Sheridan interjected quietly. "From what I'm hearing, you had your wars too. You just got through them earlier. Or maybe you had better teachers." He glanced at Delenn, and something unspoken passed between them that Troy's empathic senses caught: respect, affection, shared burden. Londo had been watching the exchange with undisguised fascination, swirling what appeared to be an alcoholic beverage with practiced ease. "You know what I find most intriguing about your Federation, Captain? You claim to have eliminated poverty, war among your member worlds, even money itself. You've created a paradise." He leaned forward conspiratorially. "Tell me, how do you manage it? What price do you pay that you're not mentioning? Because in my experience, paradise always has a hidden cost." Riker spoke before Picard could respond, his tone firm but not aggressive. "The price is constant vigilance, Ambassador. The Federation isn't perfect. We face threats, we make mistakes, we struggle with difficult decisions, but we've agreed that cooperation serves everyone better than conquest, that scientific advancement shared benefits all species, that exploring the unknown together creates bonds stronger than any treaty. How very noble, Londo said, though without the sarcasm Picard expected. Instead, something sad flickered across the Centauri's face. And how very vulnerable such idealism must make you when facing those who don't share your enlightened perspective. Before anyone could respond, Kosh's encounter suit pulsed with light, and a voice emerged that seemed to bypass ears entirely and speak directly into consciousness. They are not ready. Everyone in the room felt it, words that weren't quite words, meaning that transcended language. Troy gasped softly, overwhelmed by the presence behind that voice. Data's eyes widened fractionally, his positronic brain struggling to quantify what it had just experienced. "Ambassador Kosh," Delenn said quietly, her tone carrying warning and respect in equal measure. "The Federation has come in peace. They deserve answers, not riddles." "Understanding is a three-edged sword," Kosh replied, and the encounter suit went still. Sheridan sighed with the air of someone who'd had this conversation before. "That's about as clear as Kosh gets, I'm afraid. The Vorlons are older than the rest of us. Significantly older. They observe, they question, they occasionally intervene in ways we don't understand until much later, if ever." Worf's tactical mind was already working. "Captain, I must point out that we are near the Romulan neutral zone. The Romulan Star Empire maintains sensor nets throughout this region. They will have detected Babylon 5's arrival within hours, if they haven't already. The appearance of unknown ships and technology will be viewed as a potential threat." "The Romulans?" G'Kar asked sharply. "What manner of power are they?" "A complex one," Picard answered carefully. "They are related to the Vulcans, our own founding member species that values logic and peace, but the Romulans chose a different path, building an empire based on military strength and strategic cunning. They respect power and distrust outsiders. Your arrival in their territory..." He left the implication unfinished. Londo laughed darkly. "Ah, you see, already the complications begin. We've been in your universe less than a day and we're already creating political incidents. This is very familiar territory for us." "There's more," Data added, checking his tricorder. "The dimensional rift remains partially open and appears unstable. I'm reading energy fluctuations that suggest additional mass may be drawn through if the rift is not stabilized or closed. Captain, there may be more of Babylon 5's universe attempting to follow them." Delenn stood, her presence commanding immediate attention. "Captain Picard, it is clear that our arrival has placed you in a difficult position. We did not choose to come here, but we will not be a burden to your Federation or a catalyst for conflict with your neighbors. Babylon 5 has always stood for peace through strength and cooperation. Perhaps your Federation and our station can learn from each other." "I agree, Ambassador, but first, we need information." Picard turned to Sheridan. "Captain, I need to understand your full situation. What is your military capacity? What resources do you require? And most importantly, what are your intentions regarding this region of space?" Sheridan met his gaze directly, military commander to military commander. "Our military capacity is significant but limited. We have Star Furies, our primary fighters, cruisers, destroyers, and the station's defensive systems. The Minbari, Centauri, and Narn have their own fleets, and their technology ranges from impressive to devastating, particularly the Minbari." He nodded to Delenn. "As for intentions, we want to understand where we are, stabilize our situation, and find a way home if possible. We're not conquerors, Captain. We're survivors." "The Minbari Sharlin-class war cruiser that accompanied us," Delenn added quietly, "possesses stealth technology that renders it nearly invisible to conventional sensors. Our weapons are also considerable." I share this not as threat, but as transparency. You have been honest with us. We owe you the same courtesy." Picard appreciated the directness, even as his tactical mind calculated the implications. A warship that could evade sensors in Romulan space, with technology the Empire would desperately want to acquire or neutralize. "Captain Picard," G'Kar said, his tone carrying new weight, "you speak of your Federation's principles. Here is your first test. We are strangers in your universe, potentially vulnerable. Your Romulans sound like opportunists who would exploit weakness. Will your Federation defend us despite the political complications? Or will you make the practical choice and maintain distance to preserve your own security?" The question hung in the air, crystallizing everything into a single decision point. Picard felt all eyes on him, his crew, Sheridan's command staff, and 4 ambassadors representing civilizations that had learned to expect the worst from first contact scenarios. Ambassador G'Kar, the Federation was founded on the principle that all sentient beings deserve protection and dignity, regardless of origin. You're in our space through no fault of your own, facing threats you couldn't have anticipated. We will stand with you. He looked at each ambassador in turn. But I need something from you in return. Trust. Trust that we mean what we say. Trust that our methods, even if they seem idealistic, have served us well. And trust that together we can find solutions that benefit everyone. Delenn smiled, and it transformed her entire bearing. "Then perhaps, Captain, we have found new allies after all. And perhaps your Federation will teach us something about hope we thought we'd lost." "Hope is good," Londo muttered into his drink, "but I'll keep my skepticism close. It served me longer." The observation deck of Babylon 5 offered a vista that captured both universes in a single frame. The Enterprise D hovering nearby like a graceful swan of Starfleet engineering, while through the viewport on the opposite side, the dimensional rift pulsed with colors that had no business existing in normal space-time. Picard stood beside Delenn, both of them silent, contemplating the profound strangeness of their situation. "Your ship is beautiful, Captain," Delenn said quietly. "It speaks of a civilization that explores not because they must, but because they choose to. There is optimism in every line of its design." "And Babylon 5 speaks of a civilization that builds peace even when surrounded by those who would prefer war," Picard replied. "Both are admirable, Ambassador. Perhaps differently admirable, but equally so." Behind them, Data worked with a team of Babylon 5 technicians and a Minbari scientist named Lenia, who moved with a grace that suggested both religious training and combat capability. The young Minbari's respect for Delenn was palpable. Not mere duty, but devotion that reminded Picard of the best of Starfleet's traditions. "The Rift's quantum signature is fascinating," Data was explaining, his tricorder interfacing with Babylon 5 systems in ways that shouldn't have been possible but somehow were. "Your universe and ours appear to operate on similar fundamental principles, but with crucial differences in the nature of faster-than-light travel. Your hyperspace is a dimension adjacent to normal space, while our warp drive manipulates subspace fields within normal space-time. The Rift is attempting to reconcile these incompatible physics." Lenia nodded thoughtfully, his bone crest catching the light. "When we entered the Rift, our jump engines registered massive strain. It was as if hyperspace itself was fighting our passage. I theorize that we are no longer able to access our native hyperspace dimension. It may not exist in this universe at all." "That would explain why your jump gates appear dormant," Data confirmed. "They are attempting to open passages to a dimension that, from our universe's perspective, does not exist. However, I believe we could modify your drives to interface with subspace. It would not be as efficient as your native system, but it would provide faster-than-light capability." On the other side of the observation deck, Worf was in deep conversation with a human who introduced himself as Michael Garibaldi, Babylon 5's chief of security. The man had the weathered look of someone who'd seen too much and trusted too little, but his tactical mind was sharp. "So your Klingons are warriors who joined your Federation?" Garibaldi asked, skepticism clear in his voice. "How the hell did that work?" "Through mutual respect earned in battle, followed by recognition that we served each other better as allies than enemies," Worf replied. "The transition was not smooth. It took decades, and there are still Klingons who oppose the Alliance. But honor is central to Klingon philosophy, and there is honor in keeping one's word." Garibaldi snorted. "Honor? Yeah, we had that discussion with the Centauri. Their honor involved occupying Narn for a century and stripping the planet of resources. Word of advice: don't assume honor means the same thing to everyone." Worf's eyes narrowed, but not in anger. "I'm well aware of that distinction, Mr. Garibaldi. The Romulans have a concept of honor as well. It involves espionage, assassination, and betrayal when convenient. Honor without shared values is merely justification for cruelty." "Now that," Garibaldi said with genuine respect, "is something I can work with." Meanwhile, Counselor Troi found herself in one of the station's gardens, a carefully maintained oasis of earth plants and Minbari flora that served as meditation space for multiple species. She wasn't alone. A woman sat on a bench, her human features framed by elegant Minbari robes. Her expression troubled in ways that made Troi's empathic senses ache with recognition. "You're in pain," Troi said gently, sitting down without asking permission. "May I help?" The woman looked up, startled. "I'm fine, just thinking." "I'm Deanna Troi, counselor on the Enterprise." "And you are?" A pause. "Catherine Sakai. I'm a surveyor. Was a surveyor. Now I'm..." She gestured vaguely at the garden. "Displaced, like everyone else." Troi sensed layers beneath the surface. Grief, confusion, a profound sense of loss mixed with determination. "You're grieving for your universe." Catherine's composure cracked slightly. "We all are. This place, this station, it was built for a purpose. We were the last best hope for peace in our galaxy. And now we're, what? Refugees? Curiosities? We don't even know if our universe still exists or if we've somehow been cut off from everything we knew. The Federation has experience with displaced peoples," Troi offered. "Not on this scale, but we understand the trauma of losing one's home. We will help you however we can." "Will you?" Catherine asked, not unkindly. "Or will you help us until it becomes politically inconvenient? Captain Picard seems genuine, but I've lived long enough to know that politics always wins eventually." Before Troi could respond, alarms blazed throughout the station, a sharp, urgent klaxon that sent personnel running to stations with practiced efficiency. Sheridan's voice cut through the chaos over the station's intercom. "All personnel, battle stations, we've got company. Multiple contacts emerging from the rift. Narn heavy cruisers, Centauri battle cruisers and, damn it, confirm that reading." Picard tapped his comm badge. "Enterprise, this is Picard. Status report." Riker's voice came back immediately. "Captain, we're reading 6 vessels emerging from the rift. Mix of Narn and Centauri ships based on the configurations we've logged. They appear to be in combat formation, and sir, they're firing on each other." In the council chambers, G'Kar and Londo had both received the news simultaneously via their respective channels. G'Kar's face went hard as stone. "Centauri warships. The Narn vessels will be escorts from the recent border skirmishes. If they've followed us through, then they're still fighting a war that may not even matter anymore," Londo finished, his voice rising. "This is insanity. We've crossed into another universe, so they're still settling old scores?" Delenn moved with decisive grace, her earlier serenity replaced by command authority. "Captain Sheridan, we must stop this immediately. If they continue fighting near the rift, the energy discharge could destabilize it further." Picard was already moving toward the command center, his crew falling in step with the precision of long practice. Captain Sheridan, I recommend we attempt to interpose the Enterprise between the combatants. Our shields can withstand considerable punishment, and perhaps our presence will give them pause. Sheridan looked at him with new respect. You'd put your ship between warring parties you've known for less than 6 hours? Diplomacy, Picard said firmly, sometimes requires demonstrating commitment through action. Mr. Data, what's the status of those vessels? Data's voice came through crystal clear. 3 Narn-Gurkwan-class heavy cruisers, 3 Centauri Vorchan-class warships. They appear evenly matched in firepower. Current engagement is occurring within 200 kilometers of the rift. If their weapons impact the rift's event horizon, my calculations suggest a 93% probability of catastrophic expansion, which would drag more ships, stations, or God knows what else into this universe. Ivanova added grimly. Captain Picard, I hope your Federation is ready for this. Because in our universe, this kind of situation usually ends with somebody dying. Picard's expression hardened with resolve. Then we'll simply have to ensure that this time, no one does. He tapped his comm badge. Picard to Enterprise. Red alert. Position the ship between the Narn and Centauri vessels. Shields to maximum, and open a channel on all frequencies. I'm going to give them something more important to worry about than each other. As the Federation starship moved into position, graceful and powerful and utterly alien to the warring factions, Picard felt the weight of first contact settle onto his shoulders once more. The Federation's ideals were about to be tested, not in comfortable diplomatic chambers, but in the chaos of actual conflict between species that had genuine cause for hatred. This was where idealism met reality. This was where philosophy became practice. This was where Picard would discover whether the Federation's approach to peace could survive in a universe that had learned all the wrong lessons from its violent past. The Enterprise D's bridge was a model of controlled intensity, every officer at their station performing with the excellence that had made this vessel the flagship of the Federation. On the main view screen, 6 warships, 3 Narn, 3 Centauri, fired upon each other with weapons that tore through the void with devastating efficiency. Energy beams in colors Starfleet had never catalogued cut across the darkness, while missile volleys traced burning arcs between combatants. Shields holding at 98%, Worf reported, his Klingon blood singing with the familiar rhythm of battle, even as his Starfleet training maintained professional distance. Their weapons are powerful, but somewhat less focused than our phaser arrays. The Narn favor heavy plasma weapons with significant kinetic impact. Centauri weapons appear to be particle beam-based, highly concentrated. Captain, the rift is destabilizing, Data called from Ops. Each weapon's impact within 500 kilometers creates harmonic resonance that widens the breach. At current rate of fire, catastrophic expansion will occur in 4 minutes, 32 seconds. Picard stood center bridge, every inch the diplomat warrior. Hail them, all vessels, all frequencies. Mr. Worf, prepare a full spread of photon torpedoes, but set them to proximity detonation, warning shots only. I want to get their attention without killing anyone. Channel open, Captain, the communications officer reported. This is Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the United Federation of Planets Starship Enterprise. You're engaged in combat near an unstable spatial anomaly that threatens all our lives. I am ordering all vessels to cease fire immediately and withdraw to safe distance. This is not a request, it is a necessity for survival. For a moment, the weapon's fire paused. Then a face appeared on screen. Narn, scarred and furious, with the insignia of what Data's translation matrix identified as a ship captain. Federation. We know no Federation. We know only Centauri treachery and Narn justice. They fired first, as they always do, and we will... A second transmission overrode the first, this time a Centauri captain with elaborate hairstyle and expression of aristocratic outrage. Lies. Typical Narn propaganda. We were defending our sovereign territory when these barbarians attacked our convoy. We have every right to... Enough! Picard's voice cut through with command authority, honed through decades of diffusing interstellar crises. I don't care who fired first. I don't care about your respective grievances. What I care about is that dimensional rift behind you that is about to tear open wide enough to swallow your vessels, my ship, Babylon 5, and quite possibly drag additional assets from your universe into ours. So I'll say it once more, cease fire and withdraw, or I will disable your vessels myself. You dare threaten the Centauri Republic? The aristocrat sputtered. Worf didn't wait for orders. 6 photon torpedoes launched from the Enterprise, streaking past both fleets close enough that proximity alarms would be screaming on every bridge. They detonated in a perfect hexagonal pattern around the combatants, creating a corona of explosive force that demonstrated Federation firepower without causing injury. The message was received. Both fleets' weapons powered down, though Picard could see their defensive postures remained active. A demonstration of capability, Picard continued, his tone allowing no debate. The Federation is significantly more advanced than either of your civilizations, but we did not survive first contact with the Borg, negotiate peace with the Klingon Empire, and build an interstellar alliance by defaulting to violence. We did it through reason, through dialogue, through recognizing that our survival depends on cooperation. The non-captain's expression shifted from rage to calculation. The Borg? I know this term. We captured it from your vessel's linguistic database, a collective that assimilates species and technology. You faced such a threat and survived. Barely, Picard admitted. And only through unity, multiple species working together because the alternative was extinction. Your situation is not so different. You've been transported to an alien universe through circumstances beyond your control. Continued warfare serves no one. From Babylon 5, Sheridan's voice joined the channel. Narn and Centauri vessels, this is Captain Sheridan. Stand down immediately. That's a direct order under Babylon 5 authority. Your government signed agreements recognizing this station's jurisdiction in neutral space. We're about as neutral as it gets right now, literally in another universe. G'Kar's voice, transmitted from the station, carried the weight of his ambassadorial authority. Narn vessels, I am G'Kar, ambassador to Babylon out of 5. You will obey Sheridan's command. We face a situation that requires every resource, every ship, every sentient mind working toward survival. Your blood rage serves no one, least of all the non-homeworld. And finally, Londo Mollari's patrician tones, though Picard detected genuine concern beneath the aristocratic effect. Centauri vessels, Ambassador Mollari here. For once in your military careers, use your brains instead of your pride. This Federation captain has just demonstrated that he could destroy your ships without breaking stride. The fact that he chose warning shots instead tells you everything you need to know about his intentions. Accept the wisdom being offered, or I will personally recommend your courts-martial when we return home. The silence stretched for long seconds. Then, one by one, the warships began powering down weapons and maneuvering to safer distances from the rift. Data's console chimed with new data. Captain, the rift is stabilizing. Whatever energy matrix it draws from appears sensitive to violent energy discharge. The cessation of weapons fire is allowing it to achieve equilibrium. Sensors are detecting something else, the science officer reported. There are objects on the other side of the rift attempting to pass through, but the aperture isn't wide enough. I'm reading multiple signatures. Ships, debris, possibly even distress signals. Troi leaned forward from her seat, her empathic senses extending beyond normal limits. Captain, I'm sensing terror, desperation. Whatever's on the other side is trying to escape from something. Riker turned to Picard. His first officer's instincts aligned perfectly with his captain's thinking. If we stabilize the rift enough to allow controlled passage, we might save lives, Picard finished. But we also risk bringing more of their conflicts into our space. Mr. Data, Can you analyze the rift's composition enough to create a controlled expansion protocol? Theoretically, yes. However, I would require direct interface with Babylon 5's jumpgate technology and assistance from their science teams. The rift appears to be a hybrid phenomenon, part subspace, part their native hyperspace dimension. Collaboration would be essential. On the view screen, the Narn captain's expression had evolved from hostility to something approaching respect. Captain Picard, we have monitored your exchange with the station. Your Federation speaks of unity and cooperation, and you demonstrate these principles even toward strangers engaged in violence. This is unusual in our experience. Unusual in ours as well, the Centauri captain admitted grudgingly, but perhaps instructive. Captain Picard, Ambassador Mollari, we will maintain position and await further orders. Though I warn you, if the Narn fire on us again, treaty or no treaty, we will respond. And if the Centauri resume their expansionist aggression, the Narn captain countered, we will defend our people as we have always done. Sheridan's voice carried the weariness of someone who'd mediated this particular conflict too many times. And that, Captain Picard, is why Babylon 5 exists, because without constant mediation, they'd kill each other within a week. Welcome to our universe's version of peace. Picard allowed himself a slight smile. Commander Riker, assemble a team. We're beaming to Babylon 5 with our science officers. Mr. Data, coordinate with their technical staff. If there are people trying to escape through that rift, we're going to find a way to help them, but carefully and with every precaution our combined knowledge can devise. Captain, Worf interjected, the Romulans will certainly have detected this incident by now. Multiple warships appearing in their border space, engaging in combat alongside an unknown station. They will respond. Soon. I know, Mr. Worf. Which means we have very little time to turn this crisis into an opportunity. Picard stood, straightening his uniform with that characteristic gesture. The Federation has faced impossible situations before. Each time we've survived by adhering to our principles while adapting to new realities. This situation is no different. As the Enterprise's senior staff prepared to beam to Babylon 5, Picard paused at the turbo lift, looking back at his bridge, the heart of Federation idealism, built on centuries of painful lessons about the price of peace and the value of diversity. Mr. Worf, he said quietly, maintain yellow alert and pray that when the Romulans arrive, they're in a listening mood. Romulans are rarely in listening moods, sir. Then, Picard replied with the faintest hint of humor, we'll simply have to be persuasive. The dimensional rift pulsed in the darkness, neither fully open nor fully closed, while on its far side, unknown ships and desperate souls waited for salvation. Two universes had collided, bringing with them philosophies of peace earned through vastly different paths. Now both would discover whether their approaches to survival could coexist, or if the collision would destroy them all. The Romulan warbird decloaked with predatory precision exactly where Worf had predicted. 300,000 kilometers from Babylon 5, close enough to demonstrate capability, but far enough to maintain tactical advantage. The vessel was a masterpiece of aggressive engineering, its green hull catching the starlight like a raptor's wing, its disruptor banks already charging with barely restrained hostility. On Babylon 5's command deck, the Situation Room had transformed into an impromptu war council featuring personnel from 3 different realities. Picard stood beside Sheridan, both captains studying tactical displays while their respective crews worked with an efficiency that suggested they'd been collaborating for years rather than hours. Data and Lennier hunched over a console. Their unlikely partnership producing results neither could have achieved alone. Delenn stood near the viewport, her serene expression belying the concern Troi could sense radiating from her. Romulans, Worf growled, his hand instinctively moving toward where his phaser would be if he were on the Enterprise. They will have monitored everything, our arrival, the Narn Centauri engagement, the dimensional rift. They will see opportunity in the chaos. G'Kar leaned forward, studying the warbird's image with a warrior's appreciation. Cloaking technology. We have encountered similar concepts from the Centauri, though nothing this sophisticated. They are observers who strike from shadows. I understand such enemies. They're more than that, Picard said carefully, aware that his next words would shape how Babylon 5's residents viewed one of the Alpha Quadrant's most dangerous powers. The Romulans are brilliant tacticians, masters of espionage, and deeply paranoid about threats to their empire. They value strength, respect cunning, and despise weakness. But they are also pragmatists who can be reasoned with if approached correctly. And if not approached correctly? Sheridan asked. They'll attempt to seize Babylon 5, assimilate your technology, and eliminate any perceived threat to their interests. Riker answered bluntly. They won't do it openly. That would risk war with the Federation. But they'll try nonetheless. The communication panel chirped. Incoming transmission, Ivanova reported. Audio and visual, they're identifying themselves as the Imperial Warbird Valdor. Commander Tomalak in command. Picard's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I know Tomalak. He's brilliant, ambitious, and utterly ruthless. He's also one of the few Romulan commanders who understands that strength includes knowing when not to fight. He turned to Sheridan. Captain, this is your station and technically your territory. But may I suggest we handle this jointly? The Romulans respect hierarchy and protocol. A unified command presence will convey strength. Sheridan nodded. Agreed. Though I have to admit, this is a first for me. Negotiating with aliens from my universe's future that are somehow related to your universe's founding species. Welcome to the Federation's typical Tuesday, Riker muttered. The view screen activated, revealing Commander Tomalak in full Romulan military regalia, the distinctive V-shaped brow ridges, the severe uniform, the calculating eyes that missed nothing. He studied the command center with unconcealed interest, cataloging every detail before speaking. Captain Picard, how unexpected to find you in Romulan space with an unauthorized station and fleet of unknown vessels. His tone was silk over steel. You will understand our concern when unidentified ships appear near our border, engage in combat, and produce spatial anomalies that disrupt subspace for several light years. Please explain, Captain, before I am forced to interpret this as Federation expansion through decidedly non-peaceful means. Commander Tomalak, Picard replied with matching formality. May I introduce Captain John Sheridan of Babylon 5, an independent diplomatic station that has been transported to our universe through a dimensional breach beyond anyone's control. Captain Sheridan, Commander Tomalak of the Romulan Star Empire. Sheridan stepped forward, military bearing evident in every line. Commander, I'll be direct since that seems to be the currency here. My station and our associated vessels had no intention of entering your space or any space in this universe. We were victims of circumstances we're still working to understand. The combat you witnessed was an unfortunate continuation of conflicts from our reality. Those conflicts have now ceased, and we have no hostile intentions toward your empire or anyone else. Tomalak's expression remained neutral, but his eyes gleamed with interest. Fascinating. A dimensional breach. And yet I see humans commanding this station, speaking English, showing military protocols remarkably similar to Earth Alliance patterns we've observed through our own historical analysis. He paused deliberately. Tell me, Captain Sheridan, in your universe, did humanity also nearly destroy itself with nuclear weapons before achieving spaceflight? The specificity of the question made everyone pause. Sheridan exchanged glances with Ivanova before answering. Yes, the mid-21st century, we nearly ended our species through a combination of arrogance and fear. As did the humans in this universe, approximately 2 centuries earlier, Tomalak observed. Parallel evolution, or something more intriguing. I wonder. He shifted his attention to Delenn, and for the first time, Genuine surprise flickered across his features. "And you are not human, though you command respect in their council. Your species has characteristics suggesting both biological and technological augmentation. Remarkable." Delenn met his gaze with quiet dignity. "I am Minbari. My people have walked the stars for thousands of years, Commander. We have seen empires rise and fall, witnessed civilizations destroy themselves through pride and fear. We chose a different path, one of understanding, wisdom, and reluctant intervention only when the greater good demands it. A philosophy the Romulans might appreciate," Tomalak said, "if we believed in greater good beyond our own survival. But I digress. Captain Picard, you have placed yourself between my empire and an unknown factor. This is either supremely confident or remarkably foolish. Which is it?" "Neither," Picard responded. "It is necessary. These people are refugees through no fault of their own, stranded in a universe they don't understand, with technology and capabilities that various powers will inevitably seek to exploit. The Federation has committed to protecting them while we work to resolve their situation. I would hope the Romulan Empire would respect that commitment." "Respect it?" Tomalak laughed without humor. "Captain, I respect that you're attempting to claim an unknown station with advanced technology as falling under Federation protection before anyone else can stake a claim. It's admirably Romulan of you, actually. But here's the complication. This station appeared in space we consider part of our strategic sphere of influence. By Romulan law, that gives us prior claim." G'Kar's voice cut through with barely controlled anger. "We are not territory to be claimed by empires. The Narn spent a century under Centauri occupation. We will not submit to another power's control, regardless of what laws you invoke." Tomalak's eyebrow raised. "Passionate? I like this one. Tell me, Ambassador, yes, I can read insignia. Does your species have the military capacity to enforce that independence?" "We do," G'Kar replied with absolute conviction. "And we will fight to preserve it, as we have always fought against those who would enslave us." "Admirable," Tomalak said, and he seemed to mean it, "but ultimately irrelevant if you're outgunned." He turned back to Picard. "Captain, I'm going to be unusually direct because the situation warrants it. The Romulan Empire could destroy this station, your enterprise, and every vessel here within minutes. We won't, because that would trigger a war with the Federation that neither side wants, but we cannot allow a potential threat to exist on our border unchecked." "Then perhaps," Delenn interjected, her voice carrying that strange authority that made everyone listen, "we can offer something else. Knowledge. The Minbari have technologies and understandings that might interest the Romulan Empire. Not weapons. We will not arm potential aggressors, but scientific insights, perhaps even cultural exchange. We have experience mediating between powers that distrust each other. This is literally the purpose for which Babylon 5 was constructed." Tomalak studied her with renewed interest. "You're offering to mediate between the Federation and the Romulan Empire. Bold and potentially valuable if you can deliver. But trust is not easily earned, Ambassador Delenn." "Trust never is," she replied. "It is built through action, through consistency, through demonstrated commitment to principles even when convenient to abandon them. The Minbari nearly destroyed Captain Sheridan's people in a war built on misunderstanding and wounded pride. We stopped at the final moment because we recognized that our actions had become monstrous, regardless of initial justification. We chose peace even when victory was certain. That choice defines us." The silence that followed was profound. Tomalak's expression shifted through several emotions before settling on something approaching respect. A species that stopped a war of extermination at the moment of victory because of conscience rather than military necessity. That is either the greatest wisdom or greatest foolishness I've encountered. He leaned back in his command chair. "Very well. I will report to the Praetor that Babylon 5 represents a potential diplomatic asset rather than immediate threat. But Captain Picard, Captain Sheridan, understand this clearly. The moment this station becomes a threat, The moment we detect weapons development or military buildup aimed at Romulan interests, we will act decisively." "Understood, Commander," Picard replied. "And know that the Federation will vigorously defend Babylon 5's right to exist as an independent entity." Tomalak smiled thinly. "Of course you will. It's what makes you predictable, Captain. Also, occasionally respectable." His image flickered. "One more thing. I'm detecting additional energy fluctuations from your dimensional rift. Whatever is trying to come through appears to be increasing efforts. I suggest you resolve that situation quickly. The Empire has little patience for ongoing instability on our borders. Tomalak out." The screen went dark. For several heartbeats, no one spoke. Then Londo, who had been observing from the side, broke the silence with a slow clap. "Magnificent. Threats disguised as diplomacy, compliments wrapped in warnings, and everyone leaves the table believing they've won something while actually giving away nothing of value. This Tomalak would do very well in the Centauri court. He's also right about the rift." Data announced from his console. "Energy fluctuations have increased by 47% in the last 20 minutes. I'm now detecting coherent signals, distress calls in multiple languages. Captain, there are definitely ships attempting to transit from the B5 universe." Sheridan moved to the sensor display, his command mask slipping for a moment to reveal genuine concern. "Can you identify them?" "Negative. The interference is too severe, but based on mass and configuration, data paused. One signature matches Vorlon vessel patterns. Another appears consistent with shadow technology." The effect on the Babylon 5 personnel was immediate and dramatic. Delenn went pale beneath her bone crest. G'Kar's hands clenched into fists. Even Londo's practiced nonchalance cracked. "Shadows?" Sheridan's voice was carefully controlled. "You're certain?" "Configuration matches the parameters you provided earlier. Data confirmed. Though I must note, we lack complete data on this species." Lenia spoke for the first time in minutes. His usual calm shattered. "Captain Picard, the Shadows they are ancient beyond measure. The Vorlons are their counterparts, rivals in a conflict that has shaped our galaxy for millions of years. If both are attempting to follow us through the rift, then we have just escalated from diplomatic incident to potential apocalypse." G'Kar finished grimly. "The Shadows and Vorlons do not cooperate. They manipulate younger races to fight their philosophical war. If they bring that war to your universe, Captain Picard, everything you've built will burn." Picard felt the weight of command settle onto his shoulders with crushing force. A dimensional rift destabilizing near Romulan space, ancient beings of incomprehensible power attempting to cross between universes, and the entire delicate balance of Alpha Quadrant politics threatening to collapse around a station that had existed in this reality for less than a day. "Then," he said with absolute conviction, "we ensure they don't bring their war here. Or if they do, we teach them that this universe has learned different lessons about conflict and cooperation." He turned to Data. "Work with Babylon 5's science team. Find a way to stabilize the rift enough for controlled transit or close it permanently. We need options, and we need them before those ships break through." "Captain," Sheridan said quietly, "if you're suggesting we face down the Vorlons and Shadows, I'm suggesting we do what we must to protect both our universes," Picard replied. "Together. Because separately we'll fail. Together, we might just survive." Outside the station, the dimensional rift pulsed with increasing violence, reality itself groaning under the strain of forces older than most civilizations. While a Romulan warbird observed in silent calculation, waiting to see if the Federation's idealism would finally meet a challenge it couldn't talk its way past. The observation lounge aboard the Enterprise D had been transformed into a crisis center that would have seemed impossible hours earlier. Starfleet officers worked alongside Babylon 5 personnel, Minbari scientists consulted with Federation specialists, while holographic displays showed the dimensional rift from 17 different analytical perspectives. The normally serene space now hummed with urgent purpose, but it was in the corner where the real revelation was occurring. Ambassador Kosh's encounter suit stood motionless, yet the presence within it filled the room with weight that had nothing to do with mass. Across from the Vorlon, seated with perfect composure despite the metaphysical pressure, was a being that made even Picard's experienced crew pause in wonder. Q had arrived without announcement, as he always did. Manifesting in a flash of white light and his typical Starfleet captain's uniform, mockery or tribute, Picard could never quite decide. But for once, the omnipotent entity's usual smirk was absent, replaced by something approaching genuine interest. "Well, well," Q said, studying Kosh with the fascination of a collector finding a unique specimen. "A Vorlon, first one, ancient meddler in the affairs of younger races. How delightfully hypocritical of you to wear an encounter suit while claiming to guide lesser beings toward enlightenment." "Understanding is a three-edged sword," Kosh replied, the words resonating in that dimension beyond normal speech. "Your side, their side, and the truth." Q laughed with genuine delight. "Oh, I like you. Cryptic, pretentious, and absolutely convinced of your own superiority while pretending to serve some higher purpose. We're practically twins." "Q," Picard said with the weariness of long acquaintance, "I don't suppose you're here to actually help." "Help? Picard, I'm offended." Q gestured dramatically at the displays showing the rift. "I'm here because something genuinely interesting has finally happened in this tediously stable universe of yours. A dimensional breach bringing ancient beings, complex politics, and actual moral ambiguity into your precious Federation's backyard. This is the best entertainment the galaxy has provided in centuries." Delenn stepped forward, her presence somehow matching both beings despite the vast gulf in power. "Q, Ambassador Kosh has mentioned you in our brief discussions. You are what he terms a young god, powerful, curious, but ultimately searching for meaning in a cosmos that offers none without effort." Q's expression shifted to surprise. "She understands us both. How refreshing. Tell me, Ambassador, in your experience guiding the younger races of your galaxy, did you ever wonder if your interference caused more harm than good?" "Every day," Delenn answered simply. "The Vorlons believe they teach order. The Shadows believe they teach strength through chaos. Both are right. Both are wrong. We are leaving the younger races to find their own path now, because we finally learned that imposed wisdom is no wisdom at all." "Fascinating," Q murmured, his usual flippancy replaced by genuine contemplation. "And this station, Babylon 5, was built by those younger races to negotiate their own destinies without your interference?" "It was," Kosh confirmed, and there was something in that voice that might have been pride or regret. "They have learned. Now they teach us." Picard seized the moment. "Q, if you're genuinely interested in this situation rather than simply entertaining yourself, perhaps you could explain what will happen if those shadow vessels breach the rift into our universe." Q's expression went uncharacteristically serious. "Ah, Picard, asking the right questions as always. The Shadows, wonderful beings really if you appreciate existential horror and philosophical extremism, believe that conflict drives evolution. They're not wrong technically, but they take it to rather uncomfortable extremes." He waved his hand and the view screen showed simulations of shadow vessels. They enhance chaos, manipulate species into war, and believe that strength earned through suffering is the only true strength. In your nice, orderly, idealistic Federation, they'd be like wolves in a henhouse. "And the Vorlons?" Riker asked. "Believe in order, discipline, obedience to higher wisdom," Q replied. "Also not entirely wrong, but just as extreme in the opposite direction. Two ancient species playing chess with younger civilizations as pieces, each certain they're right, both too proud to admit they're really just lonely and desperate for validation. "You speak of loneliness," Kosh said, and the encounter suit pulsed with what might have been amusement. "The Q are the same. Power without purpose, immortality without meaning. You test Picard because you hope he will show you what you lack." Q's mask of superiority cracked for just an instant, revealing something raw underneath. Then it snapped back into place. "Well, you're certainly direct. Has anyone told you that encounter suits make you look like a glowing mushroom?" "Focus," Picard commanded with the authority of someone who dealt with Q too many times to tolerate nonsense. "The rift is destabilizing. Shadow and Vorlon vessels are attempting to cross. The Romulans are watching for any excuse to claim this station or eliminate it as a threat. I need solutions, not philosophical debates between immortal beings comparing their existential crises." Data looked up from his console, where he'd been working with Lanier and a team of Minbari scientists. "Captain, we may have a solution, though it is unconventional. The rift exists because two universes with incompatible faster-than-light physics are attempting to reconcile. Babylon 5's hyperspace and our subspace cannot coexist in the same location. However, if we could create a controlled buffer zone, a space that belongs to neither universe fully, we could stabilize passage or seal the breach permanently." "How?" Sheridan asked, leaning over the displays. "By utilizing technologies from both universes simultaneously," Lanier explained, his calm, Minbari demeanor contrasting with the urgency of his words. "Our jump gate technology combined with your warp field generators, modulated by the unique properties of trilithium that Mr. Data has mentioned, create a pocket of artificially stabilized space-time that serves as a airlock, essentially, between realities." "Brilliant," Q said with genuine admiration, "using incompatibility as a feature rather than a bug. Even I didn't think of that. And I'm omnipotent." "Mostly omnipotent," Picard corrected dryly. "Mostly is still more than you'll ever be, Jean-Luc. The complication," Data continued, ignoring the byplay with long practice, "is that creating this buffer will require both Shadow and Vorlon technology. Their organic tech vessels interface with space-time in ways that our mechanical technology cannot replicate. We would need their willing cooperation." G'Kar laughed bitterly. "The Shadows and Vorlons cooperating? They've been fighting their philosophical war for 1,000,000 years. They won't stop because we ask nicely." "Then we don't ask," Sheridan said, his command voice carrying the weight of decisions made in desperate circumstances. "We tell them both species claim they're teaching younger races. Fine, time for the students to teach the teachers. We show them that their war isn't welcome here, that we've found a different way, and if they want to be part of this universe, they'll follow our rules." "Brave words," Kosh said. "But words require action to have meaning." "Then let's give them action," Picard replied, his mind already working through the tactical and diplomatic possibilities. "Ambassador Kosh, you're a Vorlon. Can you communicate with the vessel attempting to cross?" The encounter suit pulsed. "Yes, but they will not listen to me alone. I have broken with the Vorlon philosophy of control. They see me as fallen." "What about the Shadows?" Ivanova asked. "Do we have any way to communicate with them?" Silence. Then, from the back of the room where he'd been observing, a figure moved forward. Marcus Cole, the human ranger, his English accent carrying grim knowledge. "The Shadows don't communicate in ways you'd recognize. They operate through intermediaries, through manipulation, through promises of power in exchange for service. But there are those who have resisted them, learned their patterns. The Rangers were founded partly to counter shadow influence. We know their methods." "Insufficient," a new voice interjected. Everyone turned to see a holographic display activate. showing a face that made several Babylon 5 personnel react with visible tension. Ambassador Morden, a human with the too perfect smile of someone who served darker masters. "Who authorized that transmission?" Worf demanded, hand moving to phaser. "I did," the computer replied in a flat tone. "This message was encoded in Babylon 5 systems with priority override. It activates under specific circumstances: dimensional breach, shadow detection, and presence of Vorlon representatives." Morden's recorded image spoke with chilling calm. "If you're seeing this, then the unthinkable has happened. Both Shadows and Vorlons, attempting to follow Babylon 5 into whatever disaster you found yourselves in. I'm probably dead by now, so let me be honest for once. The Shadows made me an offer I couldn't refuse, and I've regretted it every day since. But I learned things. They want chaos, but controlled chaos. They want evolution, but directed evolution. They believe the younger races are children needing harsh teachers. Show them they're wrong. Show them you've learned lessons they can't teach. And whatever you do, don't let them establish a foothold. Their war has destroyed countless civilizations. Don't let yours be next." The recording ended. The silence was profound. "Well," Q said into the quiet, "that was ominous. I'm almost impressed." Picard turned to Sheridan and Delenn. "Captain, Ambassador, we need to coordinate our response. If those vessels breach into our universe, we'll have minutes at most to establish control of the situation. The Enterprise will provide military support, but this is fundamentally a diplomatic challenge." "Agreed," Sheridan replied. "Delenn, you know the Vorlons better than anyone. What can we expect?" Delenn's expression was troubled. "The Vorlons will claim they come to guide, to protect, to illuminate. They will seem benevolent. But their protection is a cage, Captain Picard. A beautiful cage, but a cage nonetheless. They believe they know what's best for younger races. And they will enforce that belief with power that makes your Federation's technology look primitive. And the Shadows will offer freedom," G'Kar added. "Freedom to be as cruel, ambitious, and monstrous as your darkest nature. They will call it strength. They will call it evolution. They will call it necessary, and civilizations will burn believing them." "Then we offer a third option," Picard said with absolute conviction. "We show them what the Federation has learned, that diversity creates strength without requiring conflict, that peace can be built without sacrificing freedom, that younger races can find their own path without ancient beings manipulating from shadows or imposing order from above." "A nice speech, Jean-Luc," Q observed. "Now let's see if you can back it up. Because those shadow vessels are about to break through your rift, and I guarantee they're not going to be impressed by idealistic rhetoric." As if summoned by his words, klaxons began wailing throughout both the Enterprise and Babylon 5. Data's console lit up with urgent warnings. "Captain, the rift is expanding exponentially. Shadow vessels are forcing passage. Estimated breach in 90 seconds. Worf's tactical display showed multiple contacts accelerating toward the dimensional barrier. 3 shadow vessels. Confirmed. Vorlon cruiser also detected, attempting to intercept them before they cross. Sir, if they engage in combat while transitioning, the rift will tear completely open." Data finished, allowing uncontrolled transit between universes. "Captain, we are out of time." Picard looked at Kosh's encounter suit, at Q's unusually serious expression, at Sheridan's determined face, and Delenn's serene courage. "Then we stop debating and start acting," he said. "Mr. Data, implement that buffer zone protocol. Coordinate with Babylon 5's engineers. Commander Worf, move the Enterprise to intercept position. Captain Sheridan, prepare your station's defenses. And Ambassador Kosh..." The Vorlon's suit pulsed. "I will do what must be done, even if it means defying my own people. The younger races have earned their independence. It is time the Vorlons acknowledged this truth." "How touching," Q said, "an ancient being finally learning humility. There may be hope for this universe yet. Outside, space itself screamed as the dimensional barrier weakened. Shadow vessels, black and terrible and beautiful in their alien horror, pushed toward reality with single-minded purpose. Behind them, a Vorlon cruiser, organic and luminous, attempted to stop them, not from aggression, but from desperate necessity. In between them all, a Federation starship and a diplomatic station from another universe prepared to teach ancient beings that this reality had different rules, different values, and absolutely no tolerance for million-year-old grudge matches. The test of idealism was about to begin. The Enterprise D positioned itself directly in the path of the breaching shadow vessels, a gesture of either supreme confidence or spectacular foolishness. On the bridge, Worf's tactical display painted the approaching threats with colors that indicated danger levels Starfleet rarely encountered outside of Borg space. Shadow vessels entering our universe in 10 seconds. Data reported, his fingers dancing across the console with inhuman precision. Vorlon cruiser attempting to intercept. Captain, both species' weapons operate on principles our shields were not designed to counter. Recommend evasive. Hold position, Picard commanded. Hail them, all frequencies. I don't care if they understand or not. They'll hear us. The dimensional rift tore wider, and through it came something that defied every principle of engineering the Federation understood. The shadow vessels were not built. They had grown. Organic technology that pulsed with malevolent life, black carapaces that seemed to absorb light itself, appendages that shifted between solid matter and something else, something that existed partially outside normal space-time. They were beautiful and terrible, and they radiated purpose that even the Enterprise's crew could sense through bulkheads and shields. Behind them, the Vorlon cruiser emerged, equally organic but opposite in aesthetic. Where the shadows were darkness and sharp angles, the Vorlon ship was luminous curves and flowing lines that suggested both biological evolution and conscious design. It moved with grace that made the Enterprise's elegance seem clumsy by comparison. Both ancient species vessels stopped the moment they fully entered Federation space, as if sensing something fundamentally different about this reality. Channel open, Worf reported. This is Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the United Federation of Planets. You have entered our universe without authorization. You are not welcome to bring your conflict here. We are aware of your species, your philosophies, and your million-year war. In this reality, that war ends. Now. For a moment, nothing. Then the shadow vessels transmitted something that the universal translator struggled to process. Not words, but concepts that bypassed language entirely. Images of conflict, of evolution through suffering, of strength earned through chaos and pain. The message was clear. This is the way. This has always been the way. Weakness dies. Strength survives. Do not interfere. The Vorlon cruiser responded with its own transmission, equally wordless, equally absolute. Order, enlightenment, guidance from above. Younger races protected through wisdom imposed rather than discovered. We know better. We have always known better. Trust us. Obey. Be illuminated. No, Picard said simply, and there was steel in his voice that made both ancient beings pause. We are not children requiring your guidance. We are not pawns in your philosophical debate. We are the United Federation of Planets, 350 member worlds, dozens of species, thousands of cultures, and we have learned to coexist without requiring ancient beings to dictate our evolution. On Babylon 5, Sheridan was coordinating his own response. The station's weapons, inferior to both ancient species technology but sufficient for dramatic demonstration, came online. Narn heavy cruisers moved into flanking positions, Minbari warships, their stealth systems active but deliberately revealing themselves to show capability rather than hide, created a perimeter. Even the Centauri vessels, reluctant participants in any cooperative effort, maintained formation. "Shadow vessels, Vorlon cruiser," Sheridan transmitted. "You're looking at something you've never seen before. Narn and Centauri fighting on the same side. Minbari and humans cooperating despite a war that nearly exterminated our species. We built Babylon 5 to prove that younger races don't need your guidance or your tests. We can find our own way." The shadow vessels shifted, their organic hulls rippling with what might have been confusion or anger. One of them moved closer to the Enterprise, its appendages extending in what Worf's tactical analysis identified as a weapon charging pattern. "Shields to maximum," Picard ordered, "but do not fire unless fired upon." "Captain," Data said quietly, "shadow weapons operate by phasing partially out of normal space-time. Our shields will provide minimal protection. A direct hit would be catastrophic." "Noted, Mr. Data." The shadow vessel's weapon ports glowed with darkness, an impossible concept made real when Q materialized directly between the Enterprise and the ancient ship, arms spread in theatrical gesture. "Oh, stop being so dramatic," Q said to the shadow vessel. I know. You're ancient, powerful, teachers of harsh lessons, blah, blah, blah. Here's the thing. I'm actually omnipotent, and I'm telling you that these humans have something you don't. Want to know what it is?" The shadow vessel paused, its weapon still charged but held. "Hope," Q continued, his usual mockery absent. "These ridiculous, short-lived, emotionally unstable creatures have hope that the universe can be better than it is. They're wrong, of course. Mostly. But they keep trying anyway. And occasionally, just occasionally, they actually succeed." He turned to face the Vorlon cruiser. "And you're just as bad. All that pretense of enlightenment, all that claimed wisdom, and you're really just control freaks too afraid to let your children grow up." Ambassador Kosh's voice emanated from both his encounter suit on Babylon 5 and, impossibly, from the Vorlon cruiser itself. "Q speaks truth. Painful truth. The Vorlons have made mistakes. We claimed to guide, but we controlled. We claimed to enlighten, but we imposed. The younger races no longer need us. Perhaps they never did. Betrayal. Something whispered from the shadow vessels. Not a voice, but a concept transmitted directly into consciousness. Vorlon weakness proves our philosophy. Strength through conflict, order through chaos. No. Delen's voice cut through, transmitted from Babylon 5 on all frequencies. It proves you're both wrong. The Minbari learned this truth. Imposed wisdom is tyranny. We nearly exterminated humanity because we believed ourselves superior, believed our judgment absolute. We stopped only when we realized that moral certainty leads to moral atrocity. You taught us to think for ourselves. Now face the consequences. We choose to reject both your philosophies." The shadow vessels began to shift formation, preparing to either attack or withdraw. But then something unexpected occurred that changed the entire dynamic. From the still open rift, smaller vessels began emerging, not warships, but transport craft, civilian freighters, ships that carried families and refugees rather than soldiers. Behind them came more, dozens, then hundreds, all fleeing through the closing dimensional breach with desperate urgency. "Captain, sensors are detecting massive conflict on the other side of the rift," Data reported. "Multiple fleets engaging in combat. The Shadow Vorlon war has apparently escalated to open warfare. These vessels are fleeing the conflict zone." Troy gasped, her empathic abilities overwhelmed. "Captain, the fear, they're terrified. They're not military vessels. They're civilians caught in a war they never wanted." The shadow vessels and Vorlon cruiser both detected the fleeing ships. And in that moment, the ancient beings faced a test they couldn't manipulate away. Actual younger race casualties, refugees created by their philosophical war, sentient beings whose only crime was being caught between two inflexible ideologies. The shadow vessels moved to intercept the refugees, not to destroy them, but to analyze, to judge, to potentially separate strong from weak according to their philosophy. "Like hell you will," Sheridan snarled. "All vessels, defensive formation. Those are civilian ships, and they're under Babylon 5 protection. First one to fire on refugees answers to every ship here. Ancient beings or not." The Enterprise's shields extended, creating a protective corridor for the fleeing vessels. Babylon 5's defenses went to full alert. The Minbari warships positioned themselves between the shadows and the refugees with silent determination. Even the Narn and Centauri vessels, bitter enemies hours before, moved into protective formation without being ordered. "Stand down," Picard commanded, his voice carrying absolute authority. "These beings are refugees fleeing your war. If you fire on them, you'll have to go through every ship here, and while you might win that fight, I guarantee you'll learn why the Federation has survived first contact with the Borg, negotiated peace with the Klingon Empire, and built an alliance that spans a quarter of the galaxy." The Vorlon cruiser moved first, not to attack, but to shield. Its luminous hull positioned between the shadows and refugees, choosing to protect rather than guide for the first time in its ancient existence. "We made them." Kosh's voice carried weight of millennia. "The younger races. We shaped them, tested them, sometimes destroyed them in our arrogance. No more. If they reject our guidance, they have earned that right. Vorlons will no longer impose order. We will observe. We will remember. And perhaps in time, we will learn from them instead." The shadow vessels stopped, their organic hulls rippling with something that might have been confusion or revelation. Then, a transmission, not words, but images. Civilizations rising and falling, conflict driving evolution, strength earned through suffering, and at the end, emptiness, loneliness. Ancient beings with power and purpose, but no peers, no equals, no one to share existence with because everyone else had either been destroyed or fled. "You're lonely," Q said softly, with unusual gentleness. "Both of you, Vorlons and shadows, fighting for 1,000,000 years because you have nothing else. No growth, no change, just endless repetition of the same philosophical argument because you're too proud to admit you might both be wrong." One of the shadow vessels extended an appendage toward the refugee ships, not threatening but almost curious. Then it transmitted a single concept. "If not our way, then whose?" "Theirs," Picard answered, gesturing toward Babylon 5, toward the Enterprise, toward the mixed fleet of former enemies now cooperating. "We don't claim to have perfect answers. We make mistakes constantly, but we learn from them, adapt, grow. We don't have 1,000,000 years of experience, but we have something you've lost, the ability to change our minds when proven wrong." The refugee ships continued streaming through the rift, now under protection of both ancient beings and younger races working together. Picard watched them on the view screen, seeing the same desperation in their flight that humans had known during the Borg attacks, that Vulcans had experienced during their time of awakening, that countless species had felt when caught between powers beyond their control. "Captain," Data reported, "the rift is beginning to stabilize. The buffer zone protocol is working. However, we must decide soon whether to seal it permanently or maintain controlled access." Sheridan's voice came over the channel. "Captain Picard, recommendation? Keep it open, but regulated. These refugees need safe passage, and there might be more coming, but we need to control who enters and establish protocols." "Agreed. A border station, essentially." "We've had some experience with that," Sheridan replied with grim humor. The Vorlon cruiser transmitted one final message before beginning to withdraw. "The younger races have surpassed their teachers. This is as it should be. Vorlons will return to our space. We will not impose. We will remember this lesson." The shadow vessels remained longer, as if struggling with concepts that contradicted 1,000,000 years of philosophy. Finally, they transmitted images of complexity, conflict and cooperation intertwined, strength through unity rather than division, evolution through choice rather than suffering. It wasn't acceptance exactly, but it was acknowledgement that perhaps, possibly, there were other ways to grow. Then they withdrew, slipping back through the rift like nightmares fading with dawn. Q lingered, studying Picard with unusual seriousness. "You know, Jean-Luc, I've tested humanity for years, trying to prove you're not ready for the challenges ahead. Today you passed a test I didn't even set. You stood between ancient beings and their million-year war and said no. That's either growth or insanity." "Perhaps both," Picard replied. "Will you help us stabilize the rift? If you're genuinely interested in this situation rather than simply observing." Q smiled, and for once it reached his eyes. "I suppose I could, but only because I'm curious to see what happens next." Babylon 5 in the Star Trek universe, refugees from a war that destroyed their reality, and the Federation trying to apply idealism to problems that have no easy answers. This should be entertaining. He snapped his fingers, and the rift's chaotic energy suddenly organized into stable, controllable patterns. There. One cosmic dimensional airlock, courtesy of the Q Continuum. Try not to break it, And with that, Q vanished, leaving Picard wondering if the omnipotent being had actually helped or just made everything more complicated. 3 days after what Starfleet records would eventually catalog as the Babylon Incident, the Council Chambers of Babylon 5 hosted a gathering that represented something unprecedented in either universe. A diplomatic summit between Federation representatives, Babylon 5 ambassadors, Romulan observers, and refugees from another reality trying to build new lives. Picard stood at the observation window, watching refugee ships dock at the station's newly expanded berths. The Federation had provided emergency supplies, medical aid, and, most importantly, recognition of their right to exist as independent entities rather than territorial claims. Behind him, the political machinery of two universes attempted to establish framework for coexistence. "We're calling it the Babylon Accords," Sheridan explained, gesturing to a holographic display showing the treaty framework. Babylon 5 remains an independent diplomatic station, neither Federation nor Earth Alliance territory. Ships from both universes can dock here, trade here, resolve disputes here. It becomes a bridge between realities. Admiral Hathaway, representing Starfleet Command via Subspace Link, studied the proposal with the skepticism of someone who'd seen too many idealistic plans collapse under practical reality. "Captain Sheridan, you're proposing that Starfleet recognize an independent station near Romulan space, populated by species we don't know, using technology we don't fully understand, as a diplomatic venue for potentially every power in the Alpha Quadrant." "Yes," Sheridan replied simply, "because it's the right thing to do, and because it works. We've been doing this for 5 years in our universe. We stopped a war between the Centauri and Narn through mediation here. We've prevented dozens of smaller conflicts from escalating. The station proves that former enemies can cooperate when given neutral ground and genuine commitment to peace." Delenn stepped forward, her presence carrying that unusual authority that even hardened Starfleet admirals respected. "Admiral, the Minbari nearly exterminated humanity. The fact that we now work together, that I am partly human through choice, proves that even the deepest wounds can heal, but healing requires space to occur. Neutral territory where old enemies can meet without the burden of past atrocities overwhelming present necessities. The Romulans have agreed to recognize Babylon 5's neutral status," Picard added. "Commander Tomalak transmitted that confirmation this morning. They see value in a diplomatic venue they don't control, but can access. It reduces the zero-sum nature of Alpha Quadrant politics." On the view screen, Tomalak's image appeared, requested real-time participation from his warbird. "Captain Picard is correct. The Romulan Empire recognizes potential in this arrangement. A station where we can negotiate with the Federation and other powers without the complications of territorial jurisdiction, where intelligence can be shared carefully without formal alliances that bind us to actions against our interests. This Babylon 5 represents flexibility. Flexibility the Empire can exploit, you mean? Hathaway said dryly. Naturally, Tomalak replied without shame, but exploitation requires engagement, which requires communication, which often leads to understanding. Even the Romulans occasionally prefer negotiated solutions to military conflict when the outcome is uncertain. G'Kar spoke from his position, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd experienced both oppression and liberation. Admiral, I understand your caution. The Narn were slaves for 100 years. We learned that pretty words often mask ugly intentions. But Captain Picard and the Federation have demonstrated their principles through action, standing between ancient beings and civilian refugees, risking their flagship to protect people they just met, choosing idealism even when pragmatism would have been safer. This is not typical of powerful civilizations in our experience. We're not typical of most things, Riker muttered to Worf, who almost smiled. Londo Mollari, who'd been observing the proceedings with his usual mixture of cynicism and calculation, rose with theatrical flourish. I will say something I never thought I'd say. The Centauri Republic supports this accord. Not because we're suddenly enlightened. We're still quite magnificently unenlightened, thank you. But because this station has prevented us from doing things we'd regret. When you're a declining empire watching former greatness slip away, the temptation to reclaim glory through conquest is almost irresistible. Babylon 5 reminds us that there are other paths. How remarkably honest, Hathaway observed, and disturbing. Reality often is, Admiral, Londo replied, refilling his glass with what Picard suspected was Centauri alcohol stronger than Starfleet regulations would permit. Data had been working with Linnea and a team of scientists from multiple species, and now he presented their findings. Admiral, I have completed analysis of Babylon 5's technologies and their compatibility with Federation systems. The station's defensive capabilities are substantial, though not superior to Federation standards. However, their diplomatic protocols are remarkably sophisticated. They've developed conflict resolution mechanisms that Starfleet could learn from. I recommend formal cultural and scientific exchange programs. Cultural exchange with species from another universe, Hathaway said slowly. The Federation Council is going to love this, or have a collective breakdown, possibly both. Admiral, Picard interjected, I've spent 3 days on this station observing how it functions. These people have built something extraordinary, not through superior technology or overwhelming power, but through genuine commitment to cooperation despite deep mutual distrust. Yes, there are tensions. Yes, there are complications, but they make it work because the alternative is worse. The Federation was founded on similar principles. We should recognize kindred spirits when we encounter them. Troi added her perspective as counselor. From a psychological standpoint, the Babylon 5 personnel show remarkable resilience. They've been displaced from their universe, surrounded by unknown powers, and rather than retreating into fear or aggression, they've extended trust toward us. That trust deserves reciprocation. On another display, Ambassador Kosh's encounter suit appeared. The Vorlon choosing to participate despite having withdrawn from active involvement. The younger races have graduated. Teachers must know when lessons are complete. Vorlons acknowledge this truth. Federation acknowledges this truth. Cooperation follows naturally. Kosh has been more cryptic in the past, Sheridan noted. For him, that was practically a speech. The discussion continued for hours, working through details of jurisdiction, trade protocols, defense arrangements, and the complex question of refugees from the B5 universe seeking asylum in Federation space. Throughout it all, Picard watched the various parties negotiate with growing respect. Former enemies compromised. Ancient beings accepted limitations. The Federation adapted its principles to unprecedented circumstances. And somehow, despite every reason for failure, they were building something functional. "Captain Picard," a voice called from the entrance. Marcus Cole, the Ranger, entered with urgent purpose. "Sorry to interrupt, but we've just received a transmission through the rift. It's from Minbar, the Minbari homeworld. They're requesting formal diplomatic contact with the Federation. They want to share certain information about ancient technologies and prophecies that might concern both our universes." Delen's expression shifted to something complex, hope mixed with concern. The Grey Council has made a decision then. They would not reach out unless they believed the Federation needed to know something critical. "What kind of information?" Hathaway asked sharply. "The kind," Delen said carefully, "that the Vorlons and Shadows left behind when they departed our galaxy. Ruins, artifacts, warnings about threats older than either species. If Babylon 5 has been pulled into your universe, there may be others. Other stations, other refugees, or worse, other ancient beings less willing to withdraw peacefully." The silence that followed was profound. "You're saying this isn't over," Picard said quietly. "That the dimensional breach was a symptom of something larger." "I'm saying," Delen replied, "that the Minbari religious caste has studied the stars and patterns of fate for thousands of years, and they believe your universe and ours are converging for a reason. Whether that reason represents hope or catastrophe remains to be seen." Sheridan ran his hand through his hair, a gesture Picard recognized as command fatigue. 3 days ago, we were fighting for survival. Now we're potentially facing cosmic threats that make the Shadows and Vorlons look manageable. Anyone else miss the simplicity of normal diplomatic crises? "Constantly," Picard replied with feeling. "Very well," Admiral Hathaway said after long consideration. "I'll recommend to the Federation Council that they ratify the Babylon Accords. Captain Picard will serve as Federation Ambassador to Babylon 5, with Commander Riker potentially transferring to coordinate Starfleet liaison operations. We'll establish formal diplomatic channels with the Minbari and other B5 species, and we'll prepare for whatever these greater threats might be." "Thank you, Admiral," Sheridan said with genuine gratitude. "Don't thank me yet. I'm also recommending that Starfleet establish a rapid response fleet in this sector. If ancient beings start causing problems, I want more than diplomatic solutions available." "A wise precaution," Worf observed approvingly. As the formal meeting concluded and various parties began departing to their respective vessels and quarters, Picard found himself once again at the observation window with Delen. "You know," she said quietly, "when the Vorlons first contacted my people thousands of years ago, they told us we were destined to become like them, ancient, wise, guides to younger races. We believed them for millennia. Only recently did we realize they were wrong. Our destiny isn't to become them, it's to become ourselves." "The Federation learned a similar lesson," Picard replied. "We're not perfect, we make mistakes. We struggle with questions that have no easy answers, but we keep trying to be better than we were. That's all any civilization can do." "Captain Picard," Delen said with a smile that transformed her features, "I believe our universes finding each other was not accident. Perhaps there is no fate but what we make. But I choose to believe we were meant to meet, to share knowledge, to remind each other that peace, real peace, is always possible if we're willing to work for it." Picard raised his teacup. Earl Grey, hot, replicated in Babylon 5's systems with surprising accuracy, in a toast. "To possibilities, Ambassador, and to proving that idealism backed by action can change universes." "To possibilities," Delen echoed. Across the station, life was already adapting to the new reality. Minbari scientists collaborated with Starfleet engineers. Narn and Centauri diplomats argued over trade agreements while grudgingly respecting each other's positions. Human refugees from the B5 universe marveled at Federation replicator technology while teaching Starfleet personnel about hyperspace mathematics. Children from multiple species played in the station's gardens, uncaring about which universe they originated from. And through the now stabilized dimensional rift, carefully regulated, more refugees continued arriving. Not military forces or ancient beings, but ordinary people seeking safety, opportunity, hope. Babylon 5 had come to the Star Trek universe, and in doing so, both realities had been fundamentally changed, challenged to be better, to reach further, to prove that peace wasn't just an ideal, but an achievable goal when diverse peoples chose cooperation over conflict. The test of idealism had been passed, but as Delen's warning suggested, greater tests waited in the darkness between stars, where ancient beings plotted and cosmic forces stirred. For now, though, there was hope. And sometimes, hope was enough. 6 weeks after the Babylon Accords were ratified, Captain Jean-Luc Picard walked the corridors of Babylon 5 with the familiarity of someone who'd come to think of the station as a second home. The Enterprise D remained in orbit, conducting joint scientific research with Minbari vessels, while Starfleet's newly established task force maintained security in the region. The integration of two universes' peoples was proceeding with surprising smoothness, surprising to those who didn't understand that cooperation, once given genuine commitment, became self-reinforcing. He paused at one of the observation decks where a crowd had gathered. Humans from both universes, Minbari, Vulcans, Betazoids, Narn, even a few Centauri who discovered they quite enjoyed Federation replicators' ability to produce alcohol from virtually any civilization. They were watching a ceremony taking place in the space beyond. Through the view screen, a new structure was taking shape. The dimensional rift had been permanently stabilized into what engineers were calling the Gateway, a regulated passage between universes, complete with defense stations, sensor networks, and diplomatic checkpoints. It was neither Federation nor Babylon 5 territory, but jointly administered by both, with Romulan observers maintaining their own monitoring station at a diplomatic distance. "Impressive, isn't it?" Sheridan said, joining Picard at the window. The captain of Babylon 5 had aged visibly in the past 6 weeks. Command, during unprecedented circumstances, always extracted its price, but there was satisfaction in his expression. 2 months ago, I was just trying to keep various species from killing each other in our own universe. Now I'm coordinating multiversal diplomatic protocols. Career advancement gets weird. Command always does, Picard replied with understated humor. How are your people adapting? Better than expected, the refugees especially. Turns out a post-scarcity economy is very attractive when you've been struggling for resources in a war-torn galaxy. Sheridan nodded toward a group of humans wearing a mixture of Earth Alliance and Federation attire. Those are former transport pilots who've been training on Starfleet runabouts. Your technology is more advanced, but they're adapting and teaching us things about non-linear navigation we never considered. Cultural exchange at its finest, Picard observed. Delenn approached, accompanied by Ambassador Sarek of Vulcan, a diplomatic heavyweight whose presence indicated the Federation was taking the Babylon situation seriously at the highest levels. The elderly Vulcan had spent weeks in deep meditation with Minbari religious leaders, exploring their respective philosophies of logic and faith, finding unexpected common ground. "Captain Picard," Sarek said with perfect Vulcan formality, "the Minbari religious caste has shared information that Starfleet Command must be informed of immediately. It concerns the ancient beings' withdrawal and what they left behind." "I've been expecting this conversation," Picard admitted. Delenn warned us that the dimensional convergence was a symptom of something larger. Delenn's expression carried that mixture of serenity and steel that Picard had learned meant she was about to reveal something significant. The Vorlons and Shadows did not simply leave our galaxy. They departed because they recognized that their time had passed, that the younger races had matured beyond needing or tolerating their interference. But in their wake, they left guardians, mechanisms, artifacts, perhaps even other ancient beings we never knew about. These are now activating across both our universes. To what purpose? Picard asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. To test us, Sarek replied, to determine if the younger races are truly ready for the responsibilities the ancient beings have abdicated. The Minbari prophecies suggest that multiple civilizations will face trials in the coming years. Some will pass, others will not. How very cryptic and ominous, a familiar voice said from behind them. Q materialized in his usual dramatic fashion, though Picard noted the omnipotent being actually looked somewhat serious for once. But they're not wrong. I've been checking in with the Continuum. Well, annoying them, really, same thing. And they've noticed unusual activity in what you tediously call subspace, and what the Babylon folks call hyperspace. Dimensional barriers are weakening across multiple realities. Weakening how? Sheridan demanded. Think of it like this, Q explained, conjuring a visual representation in midair. Your universes were separate bubbles floating in the cosmic foam. Completely isolated? No interaction possible. But something, and I genuinely don't know what, which annoys me immensely, has started making those bubbles permeable. Babylon 5 coming here wasn't accident or random dimensional breach. It was the first of many such convergences. Other stations? Other civilizations? Picard asked. Other everything, Q replied. The multiverse is becoming a neighborhood instead of isolated pockets, and neighborhoods need rules, or they descend into chaos. Hence the tests Delenn mentioned. The ancient beings want to see if younger races can handle multiversal coexistence, or if you'll immediately start interdimensional wars over resources and territory. Worf, monitoring the conversation from his security post, interjected via comm badge. Captain, this represents massive security concerns. If hostile powers from other universes can access our reality, then we deal with them the same way we've dealt with threats in our own universe, Picard said firmly. Through strength when necessary, but diplomacy whenever possible. The Babylon 5 personnel have already proven that cooperation between former enemies is achievable. We simply need to extend that principle across dimensional boundaries. Simply, Sheridan muttered. Right, because nothing about this situation is complicated. Through the view screen, the gateway construction continued. Federation engineers worked alongside Minbari technicians, Narn labor crews, and even some shadow-influenced technology that the species had learned to repurpose without the being's direct involvement. It was exactly the kind of cooperative effort that would have been impossible months ago, but now seemed almost natural. There's something else, Delenn said quietly. The Minbari have detected other convergence points throughout this galaxy, places where dimensional barriers are weak, where other realities might bleed through. Some of these appear near Klingon space, Cardassian territory, even deep in the Delta Quadrant near Borg space. The implications were staggering. The Borg encountering alternate universe technology, the Klingons facing mirror versions of themselves, the Dominion discovering multiversal threats that made their Gamma Quadrant expansion look provincial. Captain Picard, Admiral Hathaway's voice came through subspace communication, his image appearing on a nearby display. Starfleet Command has reviewed the Minbari data. We're establishing the Dimensional Security Initiative, a joint task force between the Federation, Babylon 5's associated governments, and any other Alpha Quadrant power willing to participate. Your mission is to command that initiative, using the Enterprise as flagship. You'll investigate convergence points, establish first contact protocols for alternate universe civilizations, and develop frameworks for multiversal coexistence. A promotion disguised as an impossible assignment, Picard observed dryly. How very Starfleet. You're the only captain who successfully integrated an entire diplomatic station from another universe into Alpha Quadrant politics without starting a war," Hathaway replied. "If anyone can handle multiversal diplomacy, it's you. Besides, you'll have help." On cue, Sheridan's comm badge chirped with a similar transmission from what remained of Earth Alliance Command in the B5 universe. "Captain Sheridan, you and Babylon 5 are being officially designated as the Gateway Command, the primary coordination point for all dimensional transit and interdimensional diplomatic relations. Work with Captain Picard and the Federation. Show them that our universe's hard-learned lessons about cooperation under pressure can apply to an infinite scale." "Great," Sheridan said. "No pressure or anything. I have calculated the statistical probability of successful multiversal integration." Data's voice came through from the Enterprise. "Based on current cooperation levels, resource allocation, and demonstrated willingness to compromise among previously hostile species, there is a 63.4% chance of establishing stable interdimensional relations within 5 years. Those are better odds than we had for surviving first contact with the Borg," Riker noted optimistically. "Or better odds than the Narn had for liberation," G'Kar added, his voice carrying hard-earned wisdom. "Sometimes impossible victories are achieved through persistence and willingness to adapt. We will make this work because the alternative is unacceptable." Picard looked around at the gathering. Federation officers, Babylon 5 personnel, refugees from another universe, representatives of species that had been enemies and were now allies. It was messy, complicated, occasionally frustrating, but it was working. Not perfectly, but nothing in real diplomacy ever did. "Then we move forward," he declared. "The Enterprise will begin investigating convergence points. Babylon 5 will serve as the primary diplomatic hub for alternate universe relations, and together we'll prove that cooperation across dimensional boundaries is not only possible, but beneficial for all involved." "To boldly go where no one has gone before," Delenn said with a smile, having learned the Federation's motto and finding it resonant with Minbari philosophy about exploration and growth. "And to prove that the last best hope for peace works in any universe," Sheridan added, echoing Babylon 5's founding principle. Q watched the gathering with unusual thoughtfulness. "You know, Jean-Luc, when I first started testing humanity, I expected you to fail eventually. Too idealistic, too optimistic, too convinced that reason and cooperation could solve everything. But you keep surprising me. Not just humans, all of you younger races. You face impossible odds and somehow make them merely difficult. It's genuinely impressive." "High praise from an omnipotent being," Picard observed. "Don't let it go to your head. You'll still make mistakes. There will be failures, disasters, possibly some spectacular explosions and diplomatic incidents that make current problems look simple. The multiverse is vast and full of dangers you can't imagine. Then we'll face them the same way we've faced every challenge," Picard replied with absolute conviction. "Together, with principles intact and minds open to possibility. Because that's what exploration means, not just discovering new worlds and civilizations, but discovering new ways to coexist peacefully despite our differences." The Gateway construction completed its primary phase, and the dimensional passage stabilized into permanent accessibility. Through it, both universes could see each other, not as threats or curiosities, but as partners in the grand experiment of multiversal coexistence. Babylon 5 had entered Star Trek, and in doing so, both realities had learned that peace wasn't just possible within a single universe. It could transcend dimensional boundaries, bringing together civilizations separated by cosmic walls to build something greater than any could achieve alone. The test of idealism had passed. The real work was just beginning, but as Captain Jean-Luc Picard watched the Gateway shimmer with possibility, surrounded by beings from multiple universes working in harmony, He felt something he'd always associated with the best moments of exploration: hope. Hope that humanity, all sentient species across all dimensions, could grow, adapt, and create futures better than their pasts. Hope that infinite diversity and infinite combinations applied not just to species within a universe, but to universes themselves. Hope that the final frontier wasn't a location, but a philosophy. Constant growth, endless adaptation, and unwavering commitment to cooperation over conflict. "Captain," Data's voice came through, "sensors are detecting 3 new convergence points. One near the Klingon border, one in the Romulan neutral zone, and one in unexplored space beyond Federation territory. Preliminary analysis suggests they will activate within the next 48 hours. Then we have 48 hours to prepare," Picard replied. "Mr. Data, assemble an investigative team. Captain Sheridan, coordinate with your Ranger network. If there are dimensional breaches opening, we need intelligence on what's coming through." "Already on it," Sheridan confirmed. As the senior staff dispersed to their duties, Q lingered for a moment with Picard. "This is going to be fun to watch," the omnipotent being said. "Universes colliding, civilizations meeting, probably some reality-threatening catastrophes along the way. You're going to need all that idealism you're so famous for." "And will the Q Continuum assist when needed?" Picard asked pointedly. Q's smirk returned. "Maybe, if we feel like it, if you're entertaining enough. If the multiverse doesn't bore us first." Then, more seriously, "But Jean-Luc, between you and me, the fact that you and Babylon 5 made this work, that you stood against ancient beings and won through cooperation rather than force, that impressed even the Continuum. So perhaps we'll be watching with more interest than usual." And with that cryptic promise, Q vanished in his characteristic flash of light, leaving Picard to contemplate the vast challenges ahead. The Enterprise would investigate new convergence points. Babylon 5 would serve as the diplomatic center for multiversal relations. The Federation's idealism would face tests that could validate or shatter its founding principles. And somewhere in the spaces between realities, ancient beings watched to see if the younger races truly deserved the freedom they had been granted. But for this moment, there was peace. Hard-won, carefully maintained, constantly negotiated peace between former enemies and new friends across dimensional barriers. It was enough. For now, it was enough. The Enterprise D's warp engines hummed as the starship departed Babylon 5's sector, heading toward the first convergence point with a sense of purpose that transcended mere orders. Behind them, the gateway shimmered, a permanent bridge between realities, proof that cooperation could survive even the barriers between universes. In his ready room, Picard logged the final entry in his personal journal. "The philosophers of my youth debated whether humanity could ever truly transcend its violent nature, whether peace was achievable or merely temporary respite between inevitable conflicts. Meeting Babylon of and its associated civilizations has provided unexpected answer. Peace is always difficult, always requires constant effort, always faces opposition from those who benefit from conflict. But it is achievable, not through perfection, but through persistent commitment to ideals even when easier paths exist. We met beings ancient, beyond comprehension, species scarred by recent genocides, empires built on occupation and oppression. And we, the Federation, Babylon 5, former enemies from 2 different realities, proved that cooperation serves everyone better than conflict. Not because we're particularly wise or enlightened, but because we chose to be. The multiverse is opening. More challenges await. But I've learned from Captain Sheridan, Ambassador Delenn, and all the Babylon 5 personnel that surviving impossible situations requires not just technology or military strength, but the courage to extend trust, even when recent history suggests such trust is foolish. to boldly go where no one has gone before. That mission now includes dimensions we never imagined, civilizations we couldn't have dreamed of, and possibilities that make our previous challenges look simple by comparison. But if we can maintain the spirit of cooperation demonstrated these past weeks, if we can remember that diversity strengthens rather than divides, if we can choose dialogue over destruction even in our darkest moments, then perhaps we'll prove worthy of the freedom the ancient beings granted us. The younger races have inherited the multiverse. What we do with that inheritance will define civilizations for millennia to come. Picard closed the log and returned to the bridge, where his crew awaited with the professional excellence that made exploration possible. Through the view screen, stars streaked past, and beyond them, invisible but present, other universes waited to be discovered, understood, and integrated into the growing community of interdimensional cooperation. The test of idealism was ongoing, but the Federation and Babylon 5 had proven they could pass it together, and that made all the difference.